Jack had always been a bit of an adventurer at heart. So, when he found himself on the winding roads of Route 7 in Vermont, he couldn't help but feel the thrill of the unknown. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the picturesque landscape, and Jack was reveling in the serenity of the open road. However, his journey took an unexpected turn when he felt a sudden jolt, followed by the unmistakable thud-thud-thud of a flat tire. Cursing his luck, Jack pulled his car to the side of the road and surveyed the damage. It seemed like a routine inconvenience, a hiccup in his otherwise pleasant drive. As Jack got out of the car, he realized that the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving him in the dimming twilight. The woods around him seemed to come alive with the symphony of nocturnal creatures, and an eerie stillness settled over the area. With a sigh, Jack began the process of changing his flat tire. He retrieved the spare from the trunk, grappling with the lug nuts as they clinked against the wrench. The woods, however, seemed to hold their breath, a silence that made Jack uneasy. As he tightened the last lug nut, a rustle in the bushes caught his attention. Jack squinted into the growing darkness, wondering if it was just a curious animal or perhaps another traveler. To his surprise, a small group of figures emerged from the shadows, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. In the dim light, Jack could make out their small stature and pointed hats. Leprechauns. His first instinct was to laugh, assuming they were a group of people playing an elaborate prank. But the expressions on their tiny faces were far from playful, they were stern, almost menacing. "Who dares disturb our land?" one of the leprechauns, distinguishable by a red beard, bellowed in a surprisingly deep voice. Jack, still half believing this was some sort of elaborate joke, chuckled nervously. Hey there. I'm just changing my tire. Didn't mean to disturb anyone." The leprechauns exchanged glances, and the one with the red beard stepped forward. "Humans are not welcome here. This is our territory, and we do not take kindly to intruders." Jack, feeling a mixture of confusion and amusement, tried to reason with them. "Look, I mean no harm. I'm just passing through. If you want, I'll be on my way once I fix my tire." The leprechauns, however, were having none of it. With a sudden burst of energy, they brandished tiny weapons, tiny but sharp-looking spears and bows, and advanced towards Jack. Panic set in as Jack realized this was no ordinary encounter. The leprechauns were not the whimsical, treasure-guarding creatures of folklore. They were something else entirely, and they seemed determined to defend their territory at all costs. As the leprechauns closed in, Jack fumbled for his phone, desperately attempting to dial for help. But the signal was weak in the remote area, and the tiny creatures were now within striking distance. In a surge of adrenaline, Jack sprinted towards his car, dodging miniature arrows and evading the swift movements of his diminutive assailants. He hopped into the driver's seat, slammed the door shut, and sped away from the bizarre confrontation. As Jack drove into the night, the encounter with the leprechauns left him shaken. He couldn't wrap his mind around what had just happened. Were these creatures guardians of some hidden treasure, as folklore suggested? Or were they simply territorial beings, fiercely protective of their land? Determined to make sense of the encounter, Jack decided to do some research once he reached the next town. He found a small, dimly lit diner where he ordered a cup of coffee and opened his laptop. To his surprise, he discovered that the folklore surrounding leprechauns was a far cry from the reality he had experienced. Instead of mischievous but harmless beings guarding pots of gold, the creatures he encountered seemed to be fiercely protective of their territory, willing to attack anyone they perceived as a threat. As Jack delved deeper into his research, he came across stories from locals who had encountered these territorial leprechauns before. They spoke of incidents where unsuspecting travelers were met with hostility when they ventured too close to the wooded areas the creatures claimed as their own. It became clear to Jack that these leprechauns were not the stuff of fairy tales, but creatures with a fierce determination to defend their land. The stories of pots of gold and leprechaun mischief were merely distortions, masking the true nature of these guardians of the woods. With a newfound respect for the mystical beings he had encountered on Route 7, Jack continued his journey, wary of the uncharted territories that lay ahead. The encounter with the leprechauns had opened his eyes to the mysteries that dwelled beyond the well-trodden paths, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there were more secrets waiting to be uncovered in the heart of the New England wilderness.